and I'm going to speak Arabic just for like a little bit and then we'll switch to English. أهلا وسهلا بكم أحبائي في حلقة جديدة من برنامج زقورة، برنامجنا السياسي الاجتماعي. وياكم أنس ابراهيم من العاصمة الامريكية واشنطن دي سي. واليوم حلقة مهمة جدا نستضيف بيها شخص يعرف عن العراق لحد الآن، من كل الناس اللي ملتقي بيهم يعرف عن العراق بعد 2003 أكثر من العراقيين نفسهم. علاقة أمريكا بالعراق، ضابط الاستخبارات العسكرية الامريكية السابق مايكل بريجنت. مايكل كان مختص بمراقبة تحركات إيران في العراق. And I have to welcome Michael. احنا حنحكي بالانجليزي وبعدين هاي الحلقة ورا ما تنزل نقدر انه نحط الترجمة، تدوسون على السيسي وتشوفوها، يعني ورا ما تنزل فد بساعة ساعتين ثلاثة. Michael, how are you doing?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me on us.
Thank you so much for coming to speak about. We always wanted to talk about something. Now it's kind of like everybody's talking about the deal or the negotiation that's happening between Iraq and the United States virtually, since we are inside the pandemic. What you can tell me about that?
Well, it's an important relationship. The United States needs to make sure that it gets what the Iraqi people want. This is the first time the United States has been asked by all sectors of Iraq's population to stay and to help Iraqis push back against Iran by looking at the political parties, the ruling class in Baghdad, and actually addressing issues that should be automatic. And what I mean by that are violations of human rights and support to terrorist groups. If U.S. money is going into Baghdad and Baghdad has designated terrorists on the payroll or inside of the Council of Representatives, that should be an automatic trigger for U.S. sanctions, an automatic trigger of the Leahy Law, an automatic trigger of Global Magnitsky. And if you look at the Republican Study Committee's paper that just came out, it talks just about that. 147 Republican congressmen are willing to designate Hadi al-Amri, willing to designate the Badr Corps, willing to push back against Iran, willing to end sanctions waivers on Iraqi use of Iranian energy, and more importantly, support the protesters. And I think it's important for Iraqis to look at that. We should be able to get Democrats to jump on board here. This is a human rights issue. This is a counterterrorism issue. And this is a way to finally get Iraq right to where we can actually empower the people to push back against Iran. And all they want to do is have an election. All they want to do is have a fair and free election. If an election was held tomorrow, Hadi al-Amri would be out of the parliament, Maliki would be out of the parliament, and Muqtada al-Sadr would be out of the parliament. They may still have representation inside of it, but they would be marginalized. They wouldn't be able to push legislation to kick the United States out of Iraq because we attacked Qasem Soleimani or because we targeted Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes.
Well, when you say, okay, in Iraq they use the word America. It's always America, America, America. Who exactly wants? When we say, I want people to understand there's a difference, but who wants that for Iraq? Is that all America? Is that one entity in America?
Well, Americans aren't paying attention, unfortunately. And the Americans paying attention to the Iraq situation have seen degradation, have seen security degradation. Yeah, so that's a great question. When you ask, does America support this? You're really talking about an administration that could be in office for another 5-6 months.
Yes.
Right? And then what happens after that? And that's one of the problems is we do not have a continuous foreign policy that protects American interests and protects human rights, because we tend to change our positions every 2 years based on either a new president, a new Congress, whether or not the president has political capital to do things that we need to do. But this is the easiest opportunity for the United States in Iraq, is to simply listen to the Iraqi people. And it should be a message that Democrats, Republicans, and any administration can get behind. Let's contrast the U.S. protests here in the United States with the protests in Iraq. Democrats are behind these protests because they need the black vote to stay in political office. They have to have the African-American vote to stay in office. Well, Iraqis need the Democrat vote of confidence to stay alive. The Iranian protesters need Democrat support to stay alive. The protesters in Lebanon need the same thing. So when we look at American politics, everything is politicized. The protests have been politicized, they've been hijacked. But when we look at protests, legitimate protests, not that the United States protests aren't legitimate, the peaceful ones are, but the violent opportunists are not. But the Iraqi protests, the protests in Iran, the protests in Lebanon are simply asking for a vote, for an opportunity, for an end to the government corruption that seems to favor Iran across Lebanon, Iraq, and the regime inside of Iran itself.
But who in America stands behind the legitimate protest in the media, in the American media? We saw when terrorists went inside the compound and attacked the U.S. Embassy. The media here, from the New York Times and everybody else, they were saying that, oh, finally the protesters who were standing behind the bridge, who are shouting and demanding a country, Nurid Watan, demanding a country. Suddenly I see in the news here in the United States, like, oh, finally the protesters are already in and they're destroying the embassy.
Yeah, the narrative was actually the protesters that were against Iran are now against the Americans. And it was such a lie that the media tried to sell. When you could see Kitab Hezbollah flags in the crowd, and you could see Sabal Haq flags in the crowd, and also Hashd al-Shabi flags, to say that the people, the Iraqis that have been protesting outside of the Green Zone, that have been killed by the very militias flying those flags outside of the U.S. Embassy, that somehow they were the same. And it was such a lie to the American people. And it's something that I countered and others countered. We have to get back to a place where our enemies, the enemies of the United States, do not believe there are political outcomes that favor them, where they don't believe that if you get a Joe Biden in, then that's going to mean he's going to be easy on Iran. He's going to be easy on the militias.
Who gave $200 million to Iran? And did that money that went to Iran was part of funding Al-Quds force, and these people came to Iraq and start killing us?
Yeah, that part of the Iran deal is what you're talking about.
Yeah,
you're talking about the $150 billion under the Iran deal, and then also the payoff, the $1.7 billion given to Iran in order to release Jason and other Americans that were held in captivity.
But I'm talking also about back in 2000, in Obama time. Because Iraqis says, you Americans, I know I'm an American, I'm talking to you now on behalf of my followers who are from Iraq, who says, you Americans destroyed Iraq from 2003 to 2011, pulling out of Iraq, to funding Iran. That's your goal. America is to come to Iraq and destroy Iraq. And we heard President Trump say we should go and steal the oil and blah, 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 all that.
Yes, it's true. It wasn't intentional. It's based on our mistakes and based on our lack of knowledge about how Iraqi politicians under religious authority can lie to us. You mentioned the term taqiyya in our previous conversations.
Yeah. 2007, I was in a Rashid hotel. I worked for the United States government as a network engineer. And it happened to be that there was a negotiation then too inside the hotel. And I talked to the Iraqis, and I talked not as a politician. I was just there, and I was on the American side. And I talked to generals, and I talked to people from the administration, from the U.S. government. I told them, do you understand the term taqiyya? Do you understand that? And do you know that these politicians will say anything to you and will sign any paper and you will not get anything from them. And then back then, I didn't think that the Americans understood that. They understood that these wow, nice Iraqi politicians who wear a tie and speak English, and we should trust them.
That's all it takes. That's all it takes is if you wear a tie, wear a suit, and speak English, you can get anything you want from the United States.
And that's why these people are controlling Iraq, because there was nobody else who speak English and wear a tie and organized.
It's because Americans want to believe that if they talk to somebody, they can change their minds. It's one of the problems with politicians and senior leaders in the U.S. military and also the State Department. When they go into a meeting with Maliki, they didn't think Maliki was lying to them until we showed them in intelligence that he was lying to them. The same thing with these current negotiations. Think about the language being used to support Maliki in 2005.
Yeah,
it's the same language used to support Abadi, the same language used to support Abdul Mehdi, the same language used now to support Kadhimi, Mustafa Kadhimi. The same language by the same Americans being recycled over and over again, that now is the time America has an ally in Iraq to be able to do these things. And we continue to not want to believe that we are being lied to. It's a misunderstanding of what powerful men do in a country, absent the rule of law, where they can be corrupt, where they can kill protesters with impunity and not have the whole international community come down on them and demand accountability and justice. And it's something the United States, if it doesn't get right, and again, we have an opportunity to get this right now by listening to Iraqis. 10-year-old Americans will be in Iraq 10 years from now fighting 10-year-old Sunnis. You know, it's the problem. 10-year-old Americans fighting 10-year-old Sunnis 10 years from now. I say Sunnis because look at the New York Times report. There's an ISIS resurgence in Iraq. Yeah. The areas that were under ISIS control are not important to the Iraqi government. They're not important to the militias. There's been no effort to build a Sunni force to hold territory from ISIS. There's been no effort to bring back Sunnis and Kurds into the Iraqi army. Everybody wants to hire temporary militias. The Sunni militias that are part of the Hashd al-Shabi are left unarmed, are left out there to be targeted by ISIS in order to promote the narrative that the Shia Hashd al-Shabi are all that stand in the way of ISIS taking Baghdad.
And that's the problem. I see there's a picture behind you of Falih al-Fayyad. I see a picture behind you. I see the Prime Minister. A lot of people accuse you of being against the Prime Minister, no matter what the Prime Minister he is or she is. Well, that will never happen in Iraq.
Right.
Why the picture behind you?
Okay, the picture behind me is important because the Americans believe that because Kadhimi was the former intelligence director in the ISIS campaign, and he served well, that somehow he'll be successful against the militias, the IRGC Quds Force militias. My argument is not that I'm against Kadhimi. I'm against the U.S. perception of who Kadhimi is. The people in that room, that's Abu Fadak over my right shoulder, the leader of Kitab Hezbollah. He will be the deputy commander of the Hashd al-Shabi. His terrorist group, Kitab Hezbollah, is a designated terrorist group. It will be under the Iraqi government budget. That man over my right shoulder, Abu Fadak, will control $2 billion a year in salaries. Now, the reason for the Shia militias, the militias that are protecting the holy sites, are going into the Iraqi security forces is because Muhandis didn't pay them. And now with Abu Fadak assuming that role, he's not going to pay them either. So the Shrine militias are joining the Iraqi military for a paycheck. And everybody's trying to say, hey, this is a good thing. The Hashd al-Shabi are fracturing. There's a schism we can exploit. The Hashd al-Shabi under this leadership, under Hadi al-Amri and Abu Fadak, want the Shrine militias to go into the Iraqi security forces. So they don't have to pay them with that $2 billion budget. It doesn't matter. They've already been marginalized. Even in the Iraqi security forces, Badr Corps has primacy. These militias tied to Tehran have primacy. So it means nothing. So that's why this picture is important. The prime minister, the interim prime minister that is supposed to push for new elections is supposed to try to curb in the Iranian militias has to get the support of the men in this room. The men in this room are also members of the Fatah party, that are part of the Bana party conglomerate, where they have the largest voting bloc in the Council of Representatives. They are the obstacles to freedom in Iraq. They are unpopular. If there was an election tomorrow, they would not have power. They are the ones that the prime minister has to get permission from in order to marginalize them.
So they are running the country. And previously, Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis used to be running the country.
They're running the country. They actually have the largest voting bloc in the Council of Representatives. They have primacy in the security arena. They have primacy in the political arena. And Iran is now taking advantage of Iraq's economy in order to help it survive. We have reports of Ismail Khani, the new leader of the Quds Force, coming to Iraq and not being able to pay the militias in money, but paying them in silver rings because maximum pressure is working. Iran is so dependent on Iraq's economy that this was the reason it needed to have control of the parliament. What country forces a government to sign a contract with Iran for what, $800 million?
For electricity and gas?
Electricity and gas? Without the consent of the Iraqi people. I mean...
okay, but now the PMUs, in my opinion, and I don't know if it is in yours, they're terrorists. Why would the United States deal or negotiate with a government that's controlled by a group of terrorists? What are these negotiations about? Are they really for the Iraqi people who are protesting the regime?
I regretfully have to say no. The United States is not serious about the militias because the argument on the other side is we took out Qasem Soleimani, we took out Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis. Therefore, the militias are very weak and scattered and Iran cannot control them. Therefore, we should leave them alone. My argument is no. That's when we start helping Kadhimi succeed by targeting Qais Khazar, by targeting or sanctioning Hadi al-Amri and Barakor, by making the Fatah party illegal. There's precedent in international law to disqualify political parties that have killed civilians, that have disappeared journalists, that have conducted terrorist operations. Why is it that an Iraqi political party made up of terrorists in suits continues to get the benefit of a U.S. relationship with a government in Baghdad that is more beholden to Tehran than the Iraqi people?
But the people went out in the streets. They fought against that. They asked for freedom. We met in a coffee shop, me and you, the October 1st or 2nd when the protest was going on. And you said, you guys need to get organized. That's what you told me. You guys need to get organized, and then you need to ask the United States for help before we go and help you. But we see America is the power that supported or supports Shiites in power, and big part of that supporting these militias. And you guys, in America, we have the separation between church and power. And in Iraq, you ask al-Sistani for everything.
Yeah, here's the problem, is exactly what you said. The United States, American decision makers need to understand that the Shia are no longer the Shia. You have the militias that are killing Shia youth. You have a religious authority that has not been listened to by Iraqis. Sistani will issue a fatwa, and the only time it's listened to is when people agree with it. And if they don't agree with the fatwa, they pretend they didn't hear it. The Americans need to understand that this is the time, and if you look at the Republican Study Committee's paper that I heavily contributed to, it's about addressing these issues. It's about listening to the 80% of Iraqis that are against the religious authority in these political parties. If you look at the prime minister's ranking of the institutions that will have a say in the upcoming dialogue with the United States, it's the religious institution first. So is it Qom or is it Najaf? Then the second is the parliament.
Okay.
Is it the Fatah party? Who is it? It's the Fatah party.
Yeah.
And the third is the nation's interests. Well, is it Baghdad's interests or is it the people's interests? So the people should be ranked first. You know, if the people are ranked first, then Najaf wins. If this parliament is ranked first, then Qom wins. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
I mean, you have to agree that the Fatah party is more aligned with Qom than it is with Najaf.
Of course.
Yeah,
But here's the thing.
But I saw the look when I said that. You had like a question, like, what did I mean by that?
No, but the young men, well, because you said Najaf instead of any other place, but then I got you. The young men and women who represents a huge percentage of Iraq, over 50%, they're Generation Z and millennials, and they don't belong to one sect compared to the other. They don't believe.
They're Iraqis.
Yeah.
Right. It's an opportunity, right? So Muqtada al-Sadr tried to hijack the movement. The movement said no. The Shia youth said no. Hakim tried to hijack the movement. They said no. They don't want an affiliation with a status quo religious party that continues to put Tehran ahead of Iraq. All they're asking for the United States to do is to stop supporting the status quo.
Okay.
If you're going to sanction and designate, then you should target. You know, Qais Khazali is the third target, right? So Qasem Soleimani was one.
Abu Mahdi
al-Muhandis was two. Qais Khazali is three. Akram al-Kabi is four. Haji Shibal is five. Those three militia leaders have a say in this strategic dialogue. Those three militia leaders, and let's add Abu Fadak to that now, and let's add Ismail Khani, the new Quds Force commander, to that list. They have more of a say in what Iraq does with the United States than Prime Minister Kadhimi has. And that's a problem.
What about Muqtada? Why Muqtada is not designated as a terrorist? Muqtada fought the Americans. If we think about that.
Yes, Muqtada should be designated for what he did in 2005 through 2011. But the problem is because Muqtada al-Sadr continually changes positions based on who's paying him. And then when it's a serious time, the Iranians have always been able to move him to the position they want him to be in. You fight against this narrative in the United States that Muqtada al-Sadr is a nationalist, is bulwark against Iran. No, these are colleagues of mine. But when I sit at a table with them, and they're senior people in State Department, they're senior people in the Defense Department, they're senior people in the White House, that I'll sit with and they'll say, Muqtada al-Sadr is a nationalist. We want to actually promote him.
And I meet some of these people and I tell them, you don't know anything. And that's why we Iraqis who oppose Iran, who wants a stable Iraq, we think and believe that Michael Pregent represents what we believe in.
It's not hard to see it. It's just, if you just look at the facts on the ground and you see the players on the ground, they're the same people that caused the United States to lose in Iraq and to hand over Iraq to Iran and then to hand over the Sunni areas of Iraq to ISIS. The same people. The issue with one of the interesting dynamics with Muqtada al-Sadr is Qais Khazali hates him, Haji Shibal hates him, Akram al-Kabi hates him. Qasem Soleimani took Qais Khazali from Muqtada al-Sadr, took Akram al-Kabi from Muqtada al-Sadr, took Haji Shibal from Muqtada al-Sadr because he said, you guys are the future, Muqtada al-Sadr is not. He's not very smart. We're going to pull you out. We're going to make your own militias because Sadr is not smart enough. Qais Khazali has said Sadr is actually dumb. Sadr is somebody who you don't get smarter as you get older. You are who you are. If you were smart, you can learn more. If you're dumb, you continue to learn dumb things. Muqtada al-Sadr is more in threat by the Iraqi people than the U.S. government. He has more of a threat from the militias tied to Iran than the U.S. government. I fully expect, with the militias to turn on Muqtada al-Sadr at some point, because Qais Khazali wants to control Saraya Salam or Jaish al-Mahdi. He wants to control. He wants to be the guy.
The terrorist group. We have to say it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he wants to be the guy that Iran looks at as the person that they can trust. Now, when Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes was killed, who did they give the Iraq portfolio to? They didn't give it to Qais Khazali. They didn't give it to Muqtada al-Sadr. They gave it to Mohammed Kathrani.
Mohammed Kathrani. Yeah. What is Mohammed Kathrani's relationship with Kadhimi? I
don't know of one, but I know that they're not worried about him because they push the militias to support Kadhimi. So if Ismail Khani, Nasrallah, Kathrani, Qais Khazali, Hadi al-Amri, Haji Shibul, Akram al-Kabi, Abu Fadak, and Abu Fadak now supports PM Kadhimi, the prime minister. If they support him, it's because they're not afraid of him. If they support him, it's because they've received assurances that he's not going to go after them. That's how this works.
Michael,
that's not different.
Since we're talking about Khazali, I saw a tweet you wrote on Twitter, and it's about your T-shirt. If we could see it, and it says, "I break." Yeah, I break
quarantine for you.
And what did you write?
Well, I put so Qais Khazali is basically responsible for killing Americans since Asab al-Haq was created in 2006.
Yeah.
For directing attacks against Americans. And Qais Khazali is very known to the American military and American intelligence officers as a target, a legitimate military target. He's now been designated. His group is now a foreign terrorist organization. So what I said is, Qais, I would break quarantine for you, meaning
I will get out of my quarantine and go get you.
Well, it's a message that, I'm a former intelligence officer. Everybody knows that now, so I'm not hiding anything.
Yeah.
But Qais Khazali, when he was in detention, Iraqis, you need to know this. Qais Khazali, within 24 hours, gave up Qasem Soleimani, gave up Hadi al-Amri, gave up Dagduk from Lebanese Hezbollah, gave up Muqtada al-Sadr, gave up everybody. He gave us all the information we needed to continue to go after people. So any target after Qais Khazali was detained that the United States went after, Qais Khazali helped us go after that target. That's who he is.
But at the same time, he's hiding, and where is he? Like
we don't know where he is, but he's hiding. And you know what?
Yeah.
He is more fearful of the Iraqi people than he is of the American military.
Wow.
He had to shut down his offices across Iraq because they were being burned down and targeted. He's been in hiding. He is designated now. He's not in that room with the prime minister. He's not in that room with Abu Fadak, the picture behind me.
Yeah.
Qais Khazali's not there. You know who else isn't there?
Who?
Hadi al-Amri. You know why?
Why?
Because the threat of U.S. sanctions terrifies these people. So it used to be a badge of honor. Before taking out Soleimani, it was almost an insult not to designate Qais Khazali or to designate Hadi al-Amri. Because Mohandes is walking around, I'm designated.
Yeah.
I control $2 billion budget. I can walk inside of the Iraqi government prime minister's office anytime I want to. I can take tanks from the Ministry of Defense, from the 9th Iraqi Army Division, from the 1st Iraqi Army Division, and I can use them to go after a U.S. ally in Kirkuk. I can kill protesters with impunity, and I can meet Qasem Soleimani at the airport in Baghdad without worrying about anything. And everything changed on January 2nd.
Which that day, the morning of that day, when Qasem Soleimani and Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes got killed, the morning of that day, you published an op-ed that exactly talk about that, 2 op-eds, and you talked on Twitter, and you said these people need to be killed, and they got killed that night.
It's not difficult to see that. The K2 attack, the 30 missiles launched at the K2, the U.S. Iraqi base south of Kirkuk, that has been established to fight Daesh, to fight ISIS, was attacked by Kataib Hezbollah. It killed an American.
And Iraqis need to know who's that American, because you have his picture on your profile.
Narwaz Hamid was killed in that strike, an American, an Iraqi American who was helping Iraqi and U.S. special operators talk to each other so they could kill ISIS fighters. Instead, they get killed by a militia tied to Qasem Soleimani, and the militia belonged to Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes. So it wasn't difficult to say that. As soon as that attack happened and we knew it was Kataib Hezbollah, I said, listen, these are legitimate military targets. You've designated Qasem Soleimani. You've designated the Quds Force. We've designated Kataib Hezbollah. We've designated Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes. You know how weak the United States looks having designated these people, yet they walk around with a government paycheck. They have primacy in Baghdad. And they have access to our intelligence, to our training, to our equipment. And any success in Iraq will not happen if these 2 men are in control. So they're not in control anymore. Ismail Khani is not as powerful as Soleimani. And Qais Khazali is no Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes. Neither is Hadi al-Amri.
So there's hope.
Abu Fadak is.
Yeah? Oh, okay.
Abu Fadak is Mohandes. He was blessed by Soleimani. You've seen the picture of Qasem Soleimani hugging Abu Fadak, the guy over my right shoulder.
Yeah.
That man has more power in that room than the prime minister. And he is a legitimate military target. He will be the deputy commander of the Hashid al-Shabi. He will control a $2 billion budget. They will pay who they want to pay, and they will marginalize the Sistani volunteers. The Hashid al-Shabi don't want pushback. They don't want resistance from the Sistani volunteers. They want them out of this structure. That's the goal. The Hashid al-Shabi want to wear any uniform within the Iraqi military and still be able to use their militia uniforms and their flags as well.
So young Iraqi men and women, the protesters from Generation Z, who doesn't know so much about history, they were born, they were very young when the 2003 and everything happened, need to know that Iraq's problem, one of it, is the PMU, is al-Hashid al-Shabi. They're the ones that killed protesters, or part of the ones who killed protesters. They're the ones who stormed the U.S. Embassy, and they're the ones that stopping Iraq from continuing from, better future. And that's one part. But also, I want you to answer me about that. And then also, you said Muqtada al-Sadr, and this is very dangerous because this is what he uses to tell people. Muqtada al-Sadr is scared of those militias to come and take over him. So for some Iraqis who follow Muqtada al-Sadr, and they're literally sheeps, they will understand that Muqtada al-Sadr is fighting Iran, since those people belong to Iran. So I want you to make that point.
All right, so let me take on the Muqtada al-Sadr issue first. Yeah. Sadr was congratulated by Ismail Khani for putting down the protests.
So he was responsible for putting down the protest. Okay? Because I said that before,
so Ismail, congratulated Sadr for putting down the protest movement, for clearing Tahrir Square of protesters with force, with violence. Muqtada al-Sadr is a pawn. He wanted to be picked by Iran to be Iraq's Nasrallah. That's who Sadr wants to be. He wants to be Nasrallah in Iraq. And the Iranians look at Muqtada al-Sadr as, well, you're not smart enough to be Nasrallah in Iraq. We need somebody to be able to do that. That's the bottom line. We've heard this from militia leaders tied to Soleimani. We heard this from Iraqi. We've heard this from everyone who knows Muqtada al-Sadr inside of Iraq, is that he is not a smart man. Saddam Hussein said the same thing about him. They said, why didn't you kill Muqtada al-Sadr? He goes, why would I kill him? He's not very smart. He was Sheikh Atari. He would play video games. He's not the guy.
Mullah Atari, yeah.
Yeah, so the thing about the Hashid al-Shabi, okay, so there's the Sistani volunteers,
okay,
who listened to the call, hey, we need you to join the armed forces to go and fight ISIS. And then Sistani said, don't join the militias tied to Tehran. They fell under the command and control structure because Maliki set that up with Hadi al-Amri. Even before the fatwa, Maliki and Amri had already set up this militia command and control structure to go to seek the benefits of defeating ISIS. Remember the Tikrit offensive. There were two offensives early on.
Spiker, which has just happened, the memory of it, the anniversary of it.
So Tikrit, the Spiker.
Yeah.
It's a very important battle, but the militias couldn't take Tikrit from 1,000 ISIS fighters until the United States provided air support. So the Sistani volunteers were put in front to be cannon fodder, to be martyrs by the militias tied to Tehran. Yeah. So there were 8,000 volunteers killed. Those volunteers weren't from Kitab Hezbollah. They weren't from Asab al-Haq. They were commanded by them, but those volunteers were Sistani volunteers. They were killed. So as a precondition to U.S. air support, we said Maliki must go. And Maliki found a body came in. We told the militias, we told Iraq, get the militias out of there, and we'll work with the federal police and the emergency units and the ISOF, the Golden Division, to clear this area. So we worked with a heavily, I still have to say, a predominantly Shia force with heavy representation inside of it to clear an area of 1,000 ISIS fighters. And when that happened, the militias rolled in and claimed credit for it. And everyone took a picture where the Spiker massacre took place.
Yeah.
Because they used those photos to run for political office in 2018. And they did. And they won. They came in second. Even though the United States wanted a body to come in first and thought he would come in first, the Nasser party, right?
Yeah.
Or the Nasser. He came in fourth, behind Muqtada al-Sadr, behind Hadi al-Amri, behind Maliki. Then it was a body.
Is it a mistake for Iraqis to not go and vote? They didn't vote in 2018. They boycotted the election. Was that a mistake? Because a lot of them say the election is rigged, it doesn't matter, we shouldn't go. And up until this moment, there's a lot of people pushing for the same thing, that if there's another election going, a lot of people say, oh, I will not go vote. Was that a big mistake in 2018?
Huge mistake, because the international community is going to be looking at this next election. The goal of the current Council of Representatives is to delay the elections until 2022. That is unsatisfactory. That should be a red line for the Iraqi protest movement. It should be a red line for the United States. We should stop all funding to Iraq, to Baghdad, if the COR says, well, we're just going to wait till 2022. That's 2 more years of this rule, 2 more years of protesters, 2 more years of security degradation.
And people dying.
2 more years of Iran penetrating Iraq's economic, political, and security sectors, and religious sectors for that matter. You have to vote. And we have to make sure that we have UN observers. In 2018, it was the Shia militias tied to Tehran that guarded the voting sites, that protected the sites, that said, you vote away or else, or you can't vote, you stay away. Election interference by Iran, security by the militias tied to Tehran, the Iraqi voting the percentage of Iraqis that voted was what, 25%?
28, yeah.
28%. If you have a turnout of 65%, you can marginalize Iran for the first time since the United States handed over Iraq to Iran when we got behind Maliki.
My role is to tell that to Iraqis, is to tell them you have to vote. But here's the thing. We don't have a political party that represents the movement. And I talk to protesters every day since September 2019 about this. And they're organized without telling without coming out. They're scared of the militias to say, hey, we want to join the election. When would America start supporting non-Islamic role in Iraq, non-Islamic party in Iraq?
The United States is looking for an opportunity to support the protesters. And like you said, it needs to form a political party. There are political parties that are being formed now. The problem is that a lot of different groups are trying to say that they represent the protesters.
Yes, that's the problem.
And so, and one of the other problems is if you have a charismatic leader that the protest movement can get behind, the Iraqi government will use something to disqualify him, whether it be the accountability and justice law, whether it be the terrorism law, whether it be some sort of law that marginalizes that individual. And worst case scenario, that individual will be disappeared. That individual will be taken down by the militias and sent off to a secret prison somewhere. So I understand the concern of the Iraqi protesters that if we present a leader of this movement and you don't support him, he's dead.
Are you willing to support a new political party? America.
It's like your question. Is America?
Is America?
Some are, but the loudest voice needs to be the Iraqis. They're getting ready to protest again in July.
Okay.
That we'll probably see the biggest protests we've ever seen. The people that I talk to and the people that counter what I say are very much aware that Baghdad is losing influence with the United States. President Trump is likely to just say, "Khalas, we're out of here." Biden's going to leave Iraq. Biden has no interest in staying in Iraq or staying in Afghanistan.
Wasn't he part of the? Wasn't he the one who helped Clinton to pass a law when the impeachment was going on to start targeting Iraq?
Yeah, I mean, that's a long time ago. But more recently, he also said that Iraq should be divided in three. Okay. And it was the Iraqis that finally came together as one voice and said no. So Biden's the only guy who has ever gotten the Iraqis to agree in unison against a recommendation. Now, that may all have changed now. You know, it may be that the United States position under a Biden president is to support a Kurdish region, to support a Sunni region, and to support a region that belongs to the Shia youth, and disqualify and punish Baghdad.
And that's why your friend Ahmed Jaff, the Kurdish filmmaker, he's making a show against, I consider it, against Trump, and he's ruling for Biden so bad.
It makes sense. You want hope in a country. You want some sort of U.S. policy that helps the people. And best thing, you know, there's almost an argument that if the United States says, okay, Baghdad, we're going to leave Iraq, we're going to leave Baghdad, meaning we're going to take away our support for Baghdad, but we're going to stay in Iraq to fight ISIS, just like we are in Syria. We're in Syria under a UN mandate to defeat ISIS. We can use the same mandate to stay in Iraq. We have friends in the north, we have Sunni friends, and now we have Shia friends. If we simply made the threat to Baghdad that we are going to stop funding you, we're going to start sanctioning your leaders, we're going to start making your economy toxic, we're going to carve out areas in Kirkuk, carve out areas in Basra that become economic security zones where you can't touch it and the Iranians can't touch it. That money goes directly to the Iraqi people. The mere threat of that would have these politicians begging for the United States to stay. The militias want us out, but they don't want to see the United States punish Iraq's economy, punish Iraq's government. They want us out because it's easy to claim victory here.
So, Michael, is there a hope? So what I understand from you, people need to stand behind the election. They need to go vote. The protest movement need to be organized, and they should have a loud voice, and they need to be organized. One entity, not 6 million entities in Iraq. Muqtada al-Sadr is dangerous to Iraq, and the PMU are dangerous to Iraq, and they're two separate entities.
Yeah, the Shia youth need to protest. July needs to be big, a big protest month. The international community will be watching, whether it wants to or not, the atrocities that happen. And unfortunately, that's likely what's going to happen, is the militias are going to start killing protesters again. And Prime Minister Kadhimi is not going to be able to stop it. So it's, sorry, I'm getting this window up here.
Yeah.
Can you see me all right?
Yeah, I see you all right. Yeah.
So back to this, the protest movement needs to have a platform that the United States can accept, a political platform, a nationalist platform, an Iraqi sovereignty platform, an ally of the United States, a country that's going to help us, or a political party that's going to help the United States help Iraqis without benefiting Iran, without benefiting the political parties. So we're looking for a platform, we're looking for a political party, and we're looking for leadership. But at the same time, the United States needs to be ready for that. And that's one of my concerns, is the United States is not ready for this. A lot of people inside of Congress are. A lot of people inside of Congress are. People close to the president are trying to push him in this direction. The president, if it looks like Iraq is lost, the president is going to leave Iraq.
But here's the problem.
Leaving Iraq, what's that?
Here's the problem. In America, in Washington, the people who belong to the Iraqi government are stronger here. Qais al-Khazali has a law firm that was hired as a lobby to work on his behalf. In Congress, the people who likes Iran, who are against the United States in public, not in private. In private, they're fine, are stronger in D.C.
Yeah, so Qais Ghazali should fire that lobbying firm because he's been designated as a terrorist, and so is his organization. So he's going to have his funds, any funds that touch U.S. banks are going to be frozen. And he's also a legitimate military target now. You know, we've politicized everything.
Yeah.
In this country, Democrats believe Republicans are for Russia, against China, and against Iran. And Democrats are against Russia, for China, and for Iran. It makes no sense. These are geopolitical adversaries and foes that the whole country should be able to get behind, in saying we need to support policies that benefit the United States while marginalizing Russia, marginalizing China. And the coronavirus has helped the world see China for what it is, and also deal with Iran. And I want to get back to 2007, the United States in 2007, where Democrats and Republicans both were against the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Yeah.
And then Obama came in and wrapped his legacy around the Iranian flag, or wrapped his legacy with the Iranian flag, to where it became a position of Democrats that if you criticize Iran, you're criticizing Obama.
Okay. And he handed Iraq to Iran.
Yeah, well, Bush did too. You know, before Obama took office, you know, we could look at what Maliki was doing. And the reason I have this career, or this opportunity to talk about Iraq, is because in 2007, I told General Petraeus, and in 2008, I told Odierno, we are handing Iran to Iraq through Maliki. The Iraqi security forces are now 95% Shia. They're dismantling the Sahwa. They're dismantling the Sons of Iraq. Something is going to fill that gap. And it didn't take long before ISIS filled that gap. And now we have that security gap again. They will continue to reintroduce Americans into violence in Iraq because we continue to support a government that doesn't care about the Sunni areas of Iraq, doesn't care about the Shia youth, doesn't care about the Kurds on the left side of the river. I mean, the right side of the river. Only the Kurds on the left side. And I shouldn't have used a river reference, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They don't care about the Kurds in Erbil.
You spent a long time in Iraq.
Kurds in Soleimania.
Yeah.
They only care about the Kurds in Soleimania. And the United States needs to get this right, and it's the easiest ask we've ever had. They're not asking for military support. They're not asking for financial support. They're asking for us to stop supporting Tehran's political parties in Iraq. How hard is that? It's the easiest ask we've ever had from the Iraqi people. Just stop supporting Baghdad and we can win. I believe that's true.
Give me a reason that the Sunnis will be part of the protest in July. Why wouldn't they just ask for federalism, say, screw Baghdad, we just want to even like secede and support Joe Biden?
No, I think the Sunnis of Iraq know better than to trust in an American president to help them, because we have a consistent failure in support allies, whether they be the Sunnis, the Kurds, and now we have new allies that we are abandoning again in the Shia youth movement.
Okay.
And we need attention to this. So I would tell Sunnis and Kurds that if you're listening, State Department wants to see protests across Iraq against Baghdad. The Shia youth are inviting you to be part of this. And I understand their hesitance. Their hesitancy here is because the last time
they protested
through the referendum, Mohandas came in with tanks. And the last time the Sunnis protested Baghdad, Maliki opened fire in Ramadi on Sunni protesters. And it was the beginning of ISIS. We're right back where we started. We're right back in Iraq the day before ISIS rolled into Mosul. And we continue to get this wrong. We have an opportunity to get it right by simply saying, Baghdad, the United States is not going to support your party until Qais Khazali is arrested, detained, Abu Farak is arrested and detained. The next time Ismail Khani steps foot inside of Iraq, he's arrested and detained. Those things aren't going to happen, are they?
Michael.
Those things are. And that shows how much Baghdad is in Tehran's pocket, that you cannot arrest a terrorist that has killed your own.
Wow.
Literally, people. Abu Farak has killed protesters. Qais Khazali has killed protesters. Muqtada al-Sadr has killed protesters.
Which al-Hashid al-Sha'bi.
Yeah. Which is a very different. And think about this. If the United States says, well, we can't ask Baghdad to go arrest those guys. I say, why not? And the answer is they can't. And then my question is, why can't they? That's your problem. You have to realize that as long as these militias have control of the Council of Representatives, the United States stop all funding to Baghdad. All funding, stop it, because the COR is being led by a group of terrorists in suits that have killed Iraqis, and the prime minister is powerless to do anything about it. And that's why you have a revolution in Iraq. That's why you have people willing to die for freedom, because they look at this and say, what is going on here? How come I live in Basra, the richest city in Iraq, I have water? I don't have electricity. I don't have a job, because that money goes to Tehran and goes to the pockets of corrupt government officials. That's why there's protests in Iraq. And they're going to get louder and bigger. And if this continues, they're going to be armed next year. They're going to have weapons next year, because that's how these things evolve.
One thing that I'm an Iraqi American. I'm not thinking about going back to Iraq and living there. That's it. My life is here in the United States. I'm a U.S. citizen. And here in D.C., I live, and I'm afraid of the Iranian militias, of these terrorists. In Europe, they took over. I talk to people every day. Now they're taking over social media. They're taking over a lot of things. And our voice is getting, it should get louder, and we can't. It's very hard.
I guess, yeah, good.
What should we do?
The louder the militia voice gets, the more people pay attention to it, and the more people will want to marginalize them. So you can't be afraid. You continue. These groups like Antifa and other militant groups in the United States, they're starting to get money from Lebanese Hezbollah. They're starting to get money from the Iranians because they see them as an opportunity to hurt the United States. So we have tools for that. We're just looking for indicators. We're looking for the militias that you're worried about to become louder, because the louder they become, the more they will be marginalized. Soleimani and Mohandas became very loud on December 27th.
And they're gone.
They was Hamid. Now they've been silenced. They killed one Iraqi American and they lost their lives. 2 Americans were killed on March 12th and 1 British soldier by Kitab Hezbollah. And 14 Iraqi and U.S. servicemen were injured in that attack. The United States has not responded yet. The United States needs to shore up its deterrence strategy by answering these calls. But here in the United States, we won't put up with that. If we start seeing, you can almost warn Antifa now. I said, hey, listen, if you start taking foreign money, you're gonna get screwed. If you start taking money from Lebanese Hezbollah and these other groups, U.S. Treasury,
which they do in Europe, but we have a lot of work to do, Michael. We have a lot of work to do. Us as Iraqi Americans, Iraqis have a lot of work to do. We hope. I speak on behalf of a lot of young men and women who follow you. We hope to see you, the U.S. ambassador in Iraq that's free of the militias. I want to ask you last question, and I have only 3 minutes. Who is Michael? How do you know all this? Do you speak Arabic? Did you spend time in Iraq? Tell me a little bit more.
I owe my career since 2005 to Iraqis, to being in Iraq. My Arabic is bad. I'm working on it. درست الفصحى واللغة مصرية بس نسيت كل شيء.
يعني ازيك.
Yes, ازيك يا فندم. The whole thing is Iraq is important because Iraq is a model of what the Middle East could look like if Iraqis were simply free. Iran is the problem in the Middle East. Everybody says, what about Saudi Arabia? I say, well, Iran has more influence in Baghdad, Damascus, Beirut, and Sana'a. The Saudis don't. They have money, they throw out a problem, but they don't ever solve it. The Iranians know how to do this. They know how to marry a proxy, how to force the proxy to do things, and there is no divorce. There is no divorce. Anyway, I owe my career to Iraqis, and that's why I care so much about it. My time in Baghdad, I was in Iraq from 2005 to 2010. I was there during Desert Storm, Desert Shield, Desert Comfort, and I've been there ever since ISIS invaded Mosul. I visited Iraq and talked to Iraqis. I can't go to Iraq now.
Yeah.
I can go if I go in through Erbil, but I want that visa from the Iraqi government to come in when Iraq is free. And I would be honored to serve in any capacity in my government if it touched Iraq. An ambassador is not as powerful as the position Brett McGurk held, the ISIS czar. I would love to that role. It'd be an honor for me. Even if I lasted 2 weeks, even if I was killed in the streets of Baghdad by some militia,
God forbid.
I think Iraqis would remember that I cared about this country.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for being a guest. While we are talking, we are being attacked by people, I think in Michigan, which belongs to a guy that's Bernie Sanders, let him speak at his rally. I have my admins sending me the.
They need to watch. All we have to do is give that name to U.S. Treasury and start looking at ties to terrorist groups, and he's finished financially. He's an American citizen tied to terrorist groups, and all we have to do is make it known. Like, hey, by the way, if you look at this, I mean, Bernie Sanders is a finished campaign, and there's no way that the Biden campaign is going to let somebody like this in. But all we need to do is give his name to Treasury, and he's finished.
Which that's what we do all the time.
Yeah,
I get.
I mean, it's like, listen, every American watching right now that is somehow getting money from Lebanese Hezbollah or an Iranian proxy, know that U.S. Treasury is looking for those connections, that they're looking for those links, and they're looking for money going both ways. And any support that you give to a terrorist organization is a unlawful action. So just be aware of that.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and I hope you give us more of your time in the future.
Anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Bye. أحبائي كان ويانا الصديق العزيز مايكل بريجنت اللي أحسه يعرف عن العراق أكثر من الكثير من العراقيين، وكان وياكم أنس ابراهيم من العاصمة الامريكية واشنطن دي سي. بالرغم أنه المقابلة بالإنجليزي، المقابلة راح تترجم، هاي نفسها، نفس اللينك، هذا نفس المكان اللي انتم تشوفوه. إذا تشوفوه مو لايف معناها تقدرون تدوسون على كلمة CC اللي موجودة وتطلع لكم الترجمة. كل اللي أخذته من عنده أنه إحنا لازم نتظاهر، ومن الظاهر لازم نتظاهر العراق كله، ولازم نتنظم، ولازم يكون حزب، وهذا الحزب واحد مو 20-30 ألف حزب يمثل المتظاهرين، وهذا الحزب تكون عنده أهداف واضحة تقول للعالم كله أني ضد إيران وأني مع السلام، أني ضد الإرهاب وأني مع السلام، ويكون الأولوية مال هذا الحزب هو العراق والعراق فقط. وهذه الرسالة هي للكل، هي للكرد، للشيعة، للسنة. أعرف أنه أمريكا تستخدم هذه المصطلحات، بس هو من يستخدم مصطلح الشيعة يوث هم الشباب الثورة اللي طلعوا اللي أصلهم شيعي، بس هم حاليا جنريشن زي، أكثرهم ما يؤمنون بهاي الأشياء نهائيا. فخل نركز على هاي. مقتدى الصدر فد واحد أرعن، ومقتدى الصدر فد شخص يتمنى أنه يكون هو اللعابة مال إيران، البوبت مال إيران. وقيس الخزعلي خايف من العراقيين أكثر من ما هو خايف من الأمريكان. وهنا العراقيين الأمريكان اللي عايشين مثلي بكل سهولة يقدرون يوقفون الإرهابيين اللي مسيطرين على أوروبا، لأنه إحنا مو أوروبا. كان وياكم أنس ابراهيم من العاصمة الأمريكية واشنطن دي سي. إن شاء الله من تخلص هاي البانديميك تشوفوني في فيديوهات نكون أنا ومايكل سوية. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.